Well, aloha, folks. Welcome back to the Veterans Financial Edge. I am your host, Jason C. Scott. I know, God, I hate saying all that shit, but yes, co-founder TFMT Racing, co-founder the Task Force Mortgage Team, founder Veterans Financial Edge, and a whole bunch of other shit. Also, and this is not a G-rated show, folks. Like, I do swear a lot. You guys, if you know me and you follow me, you know this shit. So, if you got kids watching, earmuffs. But today, I've got the distinct pleasure of sharing an individual with you. And it was someone that I had on a podcast quite a few years ago. His name's Kyle Peterson. And, I'm going to introduce him here in a second, but Navy veteran, right? Navy Nuke. And that'll make sense here in a little bit as we talk a little bit more. But, this guy is doing big things for our veteran community. When I first met him, he had just literally opened up his shop. He'd been open not even a year. And what he has done in 5 years since is just absolutely outstanding and amazing. And so you guys are going to love this. Kyle, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Hey, our audience loves you, my man. Look at you. Anyway, so we were talking a little bit before we got started, buddy. But, before I get into the crazy questions, tell our audience a little about yourself. I'm going to get into some of your story, but, give us like the 30,000 foot view of how you got into the Navy, quickly what you went through, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes. How about that?
Roger that. Yeah. Thank you for that. So a lot of my story actually does start from before the military. And it starts really in my high school athletic career. We won a state championship in football, state championship in wrestling, both undefeated seasons. Played football for Boise State University. We won WAC championships there before the military. So I'm coming from an echo chamber of excellence, right? Of winning and what it takes to win as a team, to die to self and have a mission that everyone's basically rowing the same direction towards. And so I joined the military and I always identified as an athlete, but it turns out I was smart enough to join the nuclear power program. And that was interesting. They basically said, hey, you got a great score in your ASVAB. Do you like science? It's like, yeah, sure. Who doesn't like the Discovery Channel? It's like, do you like money?
This guy, yeah.
Like, you like money? Like, yeah, I like money. Here's a bonus, like 12 grand. Woo, 12 grand. And you can live on a submarine, for over half the year and all that kind of stuff. So
okay, folks, just so you understand, if you go nuclear in the Navy, there's only one place you're going to work, typically, and that's on a nuclear submarine, nuclear-class submarine, right? You very rarely get to work in a power plant, right?
So the majority of the nuclear force is submarines. There's more reactors there. Of course, there's some big aircraft carriers that have large departments, but there's not very many of them. And you also get what's called pro pay, extra money, extra $135 a month. The joke is, because the the nukes are the first ones on, the last ones off, because you have to start up the reactor before everyone else comes on board and shut down the reactor. So we call them coners, right? The people in the forward end of the boat, the cone of the boat. Of course, the term of endearment, they saw the coners, they go, how's that pro pay treating you, as we're, dragging our asses in at 4:00 in the morning, ready for a startup brief, but, it's, the cool thing is that you have to be better to be on a submarine, right? Even the coners have to be considered better in all of their training. Like, only the best are on the submarine service. Because kind of, you have to rely on each other, and you have to qualify submarines, which means you have to know everyone else's job to a certain extent. Because, if something happens bad and you become a mud dart, you got to be able to hop in, and there's only 150 guys on this thing. And so they have to be a little bit better. So that was nice. I was attracted to that because I was used to high performance from my upbringing before the military. But joining the submarine, I was the training pipeline. It's funny. I was in college. I was like, oh man, I don't want to go to college anymore. But then I ended up going to Nuke program, which is another 2.5 years of school. I could have just stayed in and got my degree. Right. But so I was in Charleston, South Carolina, for my training, and I was newly married. And sure enough, I was able to. I think I had an advantage because I went into that program a little bit older than other guys. And the other guys were 18, 19, and I was 21, married, had a kid on the way. So maybe a little bit more mature, at least I knew how to do my laundry, right? And so I was able to become what's called a staff pickup. meaning it's going right from learning the job to teaching the job, and teaching has always been something, I think teaching from the highest forms of leadership. I can imagine in your journey as you're teaching people, you always remember someone that taught you something.
Right.
Always remember your favorite teacher. Always remember that one guy in the military.
Drill sergeant.
Exactly. You
Right.
always remember someone that taught you something. And so I took that on board as a high form of leadership, and I value that, which does translate into our business now. So I was in Charleston, South Carolina for 5.5 years, actually. The first 5.5 years of my career. Had my first 3 kids there. I got 5 total. Then I went to Bremerton, Bangor, Washington, was stationed on the USS Michigan. We were 4 deployed out of Guam, so we would meet our other crew in Guam, and so that was kind of fun. Did a lot of South China Sea type stuff and some
So were you on the fast attacks at that point?
No,
Right,
I was on a different kind of special forces boat. So again, it's nice because I had always been successful. I was able to pick where I want to go, and I was on the USS Michigan was an SSGN. They took out the nuclear missiles and put in guided missiles, Tomahawks basically. And so we were doing a lot of stuff with the Australian SAS, our SEALs, and our divers. Because the southern Philippines is where a lot of the terrorists went. Northern Philippines is really Catholic, so we were doing a lot of stuff in the South China Sea. So we were special forces boat, but a non-fast attack. So I kind of had it cool with the biggest of the boats, the best of the schedules, and in a good spot. So I got lucky, and the crew I was with, we had some success too in our evaluations, and so we got to do some cool shit.
Awesome. So let's talk about that. You touched on the family a little bit. After serving in that capacity, which tied into your pre-military life, this is, I guess, it's probably going to round out the end of your military career. But what motivated you to transition from something like that into basically what you do now, which is veteran advocacy, right?
Yeah.
Especially focusing on VA disability ratings, because I think it's your personal story that really goes there, right?
Yeah, and it does tie together because, some cool thing about being a nuke is they give you some skills that are highly desirable in the civilian world in either civilian nuclear power generation, nuclear cleanup type things, or any kind of plant type job, And so I was able to I had some different jobs I used that skill towards. But while I was in the military, I was voted as the FCPOA president, which is First Class Petty Officer Association president. I was basically elected by my peer group.
You were the union boss.
Huh?
You were the union boss.
Exactly.
You're head of the Teamsters.
Basically, right? So I was our representative, and I was trying to make, us, the blue shirts, they call them the dirty blue shirts, and then the khakis, right? The leadership's okay. How do we meet our desired end state, but also not make it suck so bad, right? And so kind of wheeling and dealing, like we will bust ass if you can give us a break here, kind of deal,
Right.
And of course, when it happened, it was my job to whip some asses into shape and make sure that we earned it, right? So, but that was always fun for me. I always felt this calling to servant lead, right? To servant lead. I'm not that good at anything in particular. I think I'm not the best at anything in particular, but I sure as hell can help other people get their best out of themselves. I think that's my talent there.
Okay.
So fast forward, I'm doing the jobs. I'm going to school. I'm advancing, right? I'm burning hot, burning bright, and burning out, to be honest. So it's one of those things like on my LinkedIn profile, you see all these different jobs and promotions, right? But really what that is struggling with these organizations are not as mature as the nuclear Navy, and no one is as good as I think they should be.
Right.
So I'm tearing people up, but I'm adding value, but like it's one of those things, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so
it's eating you up inside too.
Right. Exactly. And so I'm in my master's program, and I'm now a supervisor at a nuclear power plant. I'm supervising craft, and all these guys are very good at their job, but they're also 55, 60 years old, and I'm 30 at the time. And I'm coming from this realm of high performance and that everyone's working on the team, and it's not about the contract, it's about the mission. So I'm having a hard time getting these guys to believe in me as a young guy coming out of nowhere, to believe in something on what high performance is and how we can do that together. And on top of that, I'm in my MBA program around all these studs. I'm around, CEOs of hospital systems trying to get their masters. It was a head chief surgical officer trying to become a CEO. He needed some business experience, so I'm around all these high performers, top guys in Johnson & Johnson, and I'm going to, it was a executive, MBA, but it was healthcare professionals, supply chain and logistics, and then strategic leadership, which is where I was in. And so, you know, I'm in these two areas and I'm realizing I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Okay.
And I have this kind of come to Jesus moment. It's like, wow, okay, I'm not succeeding where I've always succeeded before. And that's rare. I've always succeeded. And so this is a real hard thing that these people are not basically following me, you know?
Right.
And then I'm realizing, wait, there's a whole different ways to skin a cat. Cause I'm still looking at things as from the nuclear Navy, everything,
Right.
because that was
getting because that's what's worked. That's what
worked, you know, and it's worked for 60 years. So that was really challenging for me. And so it started through realizing that my own mental health rating wasn't accurate because, you know, I was having some mental health challenges. It was difficult balancing work as a supervisor, putting in overtime with my family and kids and school. Well, of course, these doctors and these supply chain gurus, you know, we're just talking about mental health. We're trying to bond here. And I learned quickly that there's rating criteria. I never even challenged my rating before. And the guys I was talking to, some of these guys were mental health professionals and said, hey, have you looked into this? I go, no, not even close. They showed me where the criteria was. And so I educated myself. As a nuke, you dive into the source documentation. And so I kind of use it as a way to try to control my circumstances. But of course, really, it was just kind of getting away from all the challenges. What does the book say? What does the book say? What does the book say? That's what the nukes have to do. And so I used kind of my training to dive into that stuff. And I realized one of these things is not like the other. And then even more importantly, and the real catalyst to this is that a law in 2017 was ratified by Senator Al Franken out of Minnesota. I can't say it perfectly, but it's the Quicker Disabilities Delivery Act of 2017, which allows for veterans to not have to use the VA doctors for evaluation purposes.
Right.
And that was always the problem. And you could just simply Google this, you know, and the feedback generally, the VA faces challenges, right? And I think that there's there's the way the business model of non-capitalistic type deals, you know, like there's no incentive for them to perform well or their KPIs are jacked up. VSOs bless their heart. They made their KPI is how many key performance indicator, right? KPI is how many claims they file, not how well they take care of people, how well they're liked, or how often they follow up.
Or the success of each file.
Or the success. It's all about
what are the numbers? Yeah.
Throughput, right? And of course, if I was going to be in that job, I have to keep my ass from getting chewed. I'm going to pump people through. However, and the quality is going to sacrifice. If I've got to put 20 people through this week, especially if someone's not ready, I'm going to say, fuck you, go get ready on your own. Come back to me.
Yeah.
Well, and I hate that. That, right? That is not veteran first. In any case, so when that law changed, you know, I was able to find my own doctor that was willing to talk to the guy. And actually, I helped educate the doctor on what the criteria said and was able to use real life examples of my life and I was able to be successful in accurate rating.
Damn.
So, of course, this takes time, right? By this time, I've graduated from my master's program. I get this rating, and I feel this sense of urgency. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Jesus, my legs are on fire right now. Of a new mission, really. And I've been looking for a new mission. I mean, great nuclear power is great, you know, but it's not the same as protecting your country. And I realized this, and how the hell do people not know about this? I just got lucky that I learned about it from some people that randomly new in the healthcare space that they were talking about randomly.
Yes, but at the same time, let's be. I think there's a lot of veterans like you that have that drive, but unfortunately, they just didn't have the skills that you have, right?
Possibly.
So if you think about it, your skill set with your drive is what allowed you to do it, right? And then the higher purpose was like, holy shit, I know there's other folks out there like me.
Yeah.
That don't have this, right? I think maybe that was the call. You know what I mean? Like that was the wake up call. Like, holy crap!
It was a convergence of all those things. You know, being a nuke taught me to challenge assumptions. How many times do we not realize how many assumptions are in any conversation that we have? You know, what they say, the funny thing about communication is assuming it happened, right? Because I think I tell you something and I think you're going to get something from it, and you don't get the same thing. You know, and so. You know, being a nuke taught me to value what the source document says. In this case, what does the law say? Okay. Compliance. I also, you know, I'm used to ORS or the NRC or the DOE coming down on us and auditing things. And so I value critical feedback. And so there's a way to behave compliantly within the constraints that the government gives you and also be highly successful and drive veteran first, right? So that was that skill set. And then of course the business aspect of things, I learned some things about financial reporting, about marketing, about you know, just money management in general, and life cycle, product life cycles. And there was these really cool simulations that we did. We had to sell computers, and like, and then what's the luxury model, or vice the budget model, like the Walmart, or like it was cars, like the Mercedes versus the Honda, right? And how there's many ways to skin a cat. And so where do you find your identity in those things, and where do you want to be in being authentically yourself? Because authenticity.
I think this kind of leads into my next question. Then, you founded Atlas Benefit Consulting with your wife, Tashina, right? So that probably presented quite a few challenges on its own, not counting the ones that you'd already experienced just doing the rating. So what were the challenges that you faced in establishing the company with this new mission, this new mindset of, being dedicated to assisting veterans? Like how'd that happen? I mean, because it sounds like we're almost there, and I might have, off a little early, but
and it's natural. It's interesting. I'm sure you've been doing this a long time. So the way you're asking questions is great, because they're leading, but they're also helping blend it all together. But very challenging. Number one, first and foremost, is working with your spouse, right? We've always been a team. We've always been a strong family unit. My wife's from the South, good Southern woman, and so it's always been her and I versus the world, but it's in a different capacity. We've never had to work with each other and she's a high performer as well.
Both alphas, right?
Yeah. What I would say is I'm an alpha and she's a boss bitch, right? So
okay.
She is, and there are things she's very good at, and there's things that I'm good at. And so, of course, what I would joke about is our internal struggles that we would have. That sometimes, because we're boutique at this point, it's going to spill out into some of the people that work with us, and they know it. But the end product, that iron sharpens iron as a friend sharpens a friend, or that conflict, that building diamonds, like from that pressure applied internally, our clients and our business were the benefactors of it, because whatever came out of the fights was the right answer, because it was completely challenged by her and I both to our personal detriment, right? But she was really good with all the computers and the CRM, and I was really good with the vision and strategy and sales, because I'm a veteran, right? She built the infrastructure for us to be successful. And I went out there and, captured hearts and minds. Right?
So you were, it sounds like you were running a couple of roles. Like you were the visionary, right? And you also executed the vision. And it sounds like your wife was kind of like the role of a CFO.
Yep. And CTO.
Or to even put it in military terms, you have the officers that come up with the, we always say the good idea fairies, but then the NCOs are the ones that execute, make it happen. Yeah. So it's almost like you transcended from being an NCO in the Navy to being, the CEO, the officer, whatever. And the missus, she became the executor, right? Like, and a lot of times, even in my own business, I am truly a visionary, because that's what builds business, right? And unfortunately, a lot of visionaries do also. It's hard for us to take a step back, because we don't feel like anybody can do it like us, right? And so you have to have that strong right hand that can say, no, do your lane. And it goes back to, like, even when I was on, combat missions, I would tell the LT, sir, do you want to lead troops or do you want to call in reports? You can't do both. Whatever you want to do, I'm going to do the other. So if you want me to lead troops and you call reports, hey, we'll make it happen. CO probably won't like it, but this is the deal, right? And so it sounds like, and like you said, working with your spouse, I've had that experience as well. When I first, got into the industry, she worked with me. I would never say she worked for me, even though, yes, technically I was her boss, because that would not fly. But, she was the one that she supported me by saying, hey, you got to stay within these limits. You got to, she wasn't trying to stifle. It was just, she was really trying to support. And I had to be willing to, like you said, get that critical feedback and not take it personal. But it's hard because it's your spouse, right? So I totally get that. So that being the case, we go back to your MBA and stuff. Now you got a couple things going on. You're working with a spouse. You've got this formal training, right? How does that mix?
Well, so I had graduated and got my rating before we started the business, and
Okay.
so I was out of school at that point, but I was chopping at the bit to use the skills, and again, more importantly, the confidence that the program gave me. By the end of the thing, I realized that everyone belongs. It's really who's just willing to step into that. It's attitude and effort. It's not really skill and talent, because there's a lot more skill and talented people and smarter people out there that don't do shit with anything, right? So
Sure.
it's who's got the fortitude to jump into it, right? It's that risk tolerance. And so after realizing at the end of this thing is I was just as good as everyone else, just a different path. When I had guys coming to me and talking about like life and like the brass tacks leadership that being on a submarine, because everyone's interested in that. Like, what the fuck is it like being on a submarine? And the experience, it's like, well, it's really like prison, except worse. You have to work every day.
And you're underwater.
Yeah, exactly.
And you could die.
You could literally die. Yeah, everything's trying to kill you on a submarine. Fire, flooding. If your air makers go down. If the reactor scrams. I mean, it's an airplane underwater. So if you're not driving forward, they say Nuke, shut up and push, make that screw go roundy. If you're not, you're just going to go down into the water, right? So reactor power is kind of important. But by this time, so after at this point, I'm no longer in the nuclear power plant because it was pretty toxic. So I ended up working for a Department of Energy radioactive waste cleanup site. But we had moved. I basically moved back home, so we have some family close. We're trying to kind of recreate ourselves here. I have a degree, and this is right before COVID. I start this journey in 2018, get my rating in 2019, and of course, with that new compensation, I had some capital to risk. And that, I tell you what, in our business, we've helped people start their own businesses. It can be potentially life-changing. And so I was able to basically quit my regular job and start the business because I had a safety net to fall back on. And that was a liberating experience. Like, okay, I know we're not going to completely fail because, for one, failing is only failing to learn, and I'm going to learn something no matter what. And we have resource that will, and family here. If case the business fails, I can always pick up, because as a nuclear trained person, I kind of have a white collar hammock to always fall into because nuclear power is so hard to get into. But once you have it, you're in. It's kind of not really a good old boys club, but not very many people are trying to learn about nuclear power. And there's not very many avenues outside of the Navy. Not what you know, it's who you know, right? And so that kind of helps. You're only 1 or 2 degrees of separation from anyone in the nuclear power world. And so I had a safety net there. And so I was able to completely 100% jump in. And 100% of me is better than, a half-assed part of me. And so I think it worked because I had that freedom. But what it came down to is, honey, this is something I want to do, but I can't do it without you at this point. Because I'm still working this other job. I got to start this company, trying to do this whole transitionary thing. And I need your help. And what do you think? Right. I mean, we just came from a really hard time in our lives when I was trying to do, it's like in the military, you're always growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. You're always qualifying. You're always advancing. So I have this weird thing about me that if I'm not in some sort of pain, I'm not winning. I'm not growing. And so, of course, I get done with my degree and like, what am I going to do now? I'm going to start a business on top of working, 40 plus hours a week. Of course I am. Right. Because that's just part of my conditioning. But she said, okay, honey, I know that this is something you've always wanted to do. And I'll support you. I'm like, and I didn't even ask you, and I didn't even ask her, you sure? I was like, let's go. Let's fucking go. And started thinking about the name of our company. And we were on a drive to Yakima, actually. And we came up with Atlas Benefit Consulting because we believe that the freedom and democracy of the free world rests on the back of veterans. And so this is why we have this little guy here.
I love it.
And so I'll start with that vision, being putting veterans first. And we had to say, like, okay, would we do this for free? Generally, like the guys that really love playing professional sports, they would do it for free. And you see those guys advance or succeed. And to some degree, right, we would do this for free. As a matter of fact, all of our screenings, we spend an inefficient amount of time during our screenings because we want to ensure every single person we talk to leaves with a success path, some homework, some understanding, some resources to be successful on their own if they can't. So that way we're only taking people that need us or want us. And that...
Forgive me for interrupting again. So folks, just so you understand, because we haven't come to it yet, I'm just going to have, 3-word thing. This is what we do. Kyle literally helps veterans, and forgive me if I screw this up, improve or increase their ratings that they've received from the VA through their term of service in the military. Sound about right?
Yep. The best, most compliant way to say that would be we help veterans get accurate VA disability ratings. So
there we go.
It's about accuracy, right? Because we part of our screenings ensure there's merit from what the CFR say, not what you think about it, not what I think about it, not what Jimmy thinks about it. It's what the law says.
What does the data say? Yeah,
exactly. And the thing is so many of us in our pride, men especially, Hey
folks, if you're here, that means this podcast has went at least 25 minutes. And I don't know whether I should apologize or say thank you, because that means if you're watching me right now, you're actually finding value in this episode. I'm asking you to do me a favor. Like, subscribe, and share so that way other people can also enjoy the benefit of the information that we're putting out each week.
It's good to be proud of what you've done, but don't be prideful about it. And we care more about respect than love. We want everyone, even the VA doctors who don't give a shit about us, to respect us. We don't want to be seen less than. And so there's good, if there's good parts about that, but when it comes to VA disability ratings, I hate that fucking word. These are physical and mental manifestations of the sacrifices vets have made for their country that they and their family members have to deal with on a yearly basis. Simply using that word disability is not unable to. That's the thing, is that we have to challenge assumptions, right? Like I talked about before. The assumption here means if disabled means I'm unable to. That's not the case. Right. During flare-ups, is there pain and functional loss? Functional loss here, and we're talking about the smiley face scale at your pediatrician's place on 1 through 10, right? Not what, just because you can push through it, should you? If you would tell someone you love to not do that thing, and if you told your boss at work or a doctor, they would also say, don't do that fucking thing.
Well, it's even simpler than that, if you think about it. Before you served, you weren't wired that way, right? Your body worked differently. Your mind worked differently, right? So, and like, it goes back to what you were saying. Like, I think part of it is, people are going to hate me for saying this. Serving the military, I liken to serving a prison sentence to some degree, because when people have served any amount of time in prison, a lot of times if they've been paroled or they get out, they have a hard time going back to normal society because they've been indoctrinated to a certain way of living. Same thing with veterans. If you've served a certain amount of time, you've been indoctrinated to a certain way of thinking, a certain way of performing, and a certain way of living. Now, granted, the pros are much better than the cons as far as like, critical thinking, problem solving, the taking an initiative, stuff of that nature. Those are all things I find very valuable traits that I have been instilled into me. However, the drawback is solving problems at the lowest level. Well, if I solve at the lowest level and I can't solve it, well then, okay, it just wasn't meant to happen. I'm just going to move on and push through, right? That is a bad thing, right? Because prior to serving the military, if I couldn't solve a problem, it was, okay, I need to find someone that can help me. There was no shame in it, right? Where almost now most veterans feel like shameful to ask for help, right? And it's a dewiring process. So I agree with you. The disability, that's a word that they've got to use, I guess, in the medical,
right,
whatever. But typically at its root cause, a disability is meaning you're unable to do something, right? I think this is more about, right? Like where now it's not that and yes, don't get me wrong, there's people that have physical disabilities that they can no longer do stuff that they did prior to their service in the military. But a lot of it is, okay, I have to do it a different way now. I can't do it the way that it was because of my service broke me down to a point to where I can no longer do it to what God gave me to begin with, right?
Right. Yeah, and also what people don't understand is that you are supposed to be rated on flare-up conditions, which is your worst day. There's court case precedent that has been fought and won and flowed down, and you can follow it on hyperlinks in the M21 manual or on va.gov, which says you have to be rated on flare-up conditions, not how you are that day. Even though the doctors try to rate you on how you are that day. And that's how.
Which is crazy, because these people that are getting that temporary 100% for like 2 years or 3 years, they come back once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then their ratings change because on that one day, they were having a good day, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, my alter ego is Darth Vader. There's a reason why he's behind me. Right. And that was given to me by my wife on Valentine's Day many years ago. But it says we'll rule the galaxy together, right? Whatever.
I love it.
And that's why I try to tell people, I'm like, you see what I allow you to see, right?
Exactly.
Like
perception management is what I said.
Yeah, right. So I mean, do I have dark days? Absolutely. I have just learned how to deal with them better, and that's the process. It's like, okay, hey. And it took a lot of counseling, a lot of talking with other professional people, getting my wife involved, just like, I mean, like that was the biggest thing for me going through BIOP. I tell, a lot of people don't know this, but they're going to know it now. At the end of my career, I self-admitted into BIOP, which is the Behavioral Health Outpatient Program, which is the crazy house, but not the full-blown crazy house, right? And the director of the facility that I went to was a Navy captain, retired. Normally, the director doesn't get involved with individual, we'll say, clients that are going through the program.
Mm-hmm.
But he had seen my dossier, he'd seen, my history. And for some reason, he told his staff, hey, I'm going to work with this individual directly. Wow. Right. And, this was I want to say it's like a 12-week, it was a 12-week program. Okay. I don't know how long it is anymore because PRRP is a 6-month program, but completely outpatient, but you're not in military uniform. You go in regular clothes and you're going up to, at this point I'm in Hawaii. So it's a Triple Army Medical Center. And I'm meeting with this captain every day. Right. And every time I come home, I'm mentally spent by the end of the day. I'm just literally mentally just fatigued.
Right.
And my wife was asking me like, so how'd it go? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And I can't even remember my name at this point because it's just so much to absorb every day. And to top it all off, I felt like I was playing mental chess with, Bobby Fischer and losing every day. Right. Because there was a resistance because I'm like, all right, you're just a Navy captain. How the hell are you going to know, like just the typical stuff. Right. And then finally, I want to say like week 2, we're having our hour session, he and I, in between exercises of stuff. And I was like, sir, I don't know if I'm going to be able to complete this course if I can't at least have my wife come once a week while we're having these meetings. Right. And at that time, spouses were not allowed to attend at all.
Okay.
And he was like, well, talk to me why. And I was like, sir, it takes 110% of my effort every day just to deal with you and your staff and to just to survive each day. Then I got to go home and try to recall everything, regurgitate it, and try to make sense to my wife. I can't do it. If I could just have my wife come once a week when we're having these sessions, she doesn't need to see everything else, but just the you and I time, that would be a huge solid. And he's like, you know what? Let me look into it. Next day, he's like, hey, Sergeant Scott, you know what? Next week, bring your wife, blah, blah, blah. Well, that was the biggest eye opener to my wife because, she always said she married a teddy bear, but got a porcupine, right? And that's exactly what the Navy captain said. He goes, you got to understand, blah, blah, blah. And because I did so well through the program with her being there once a week, they made it a DOD policy nationwide. Wow. So she was like the trendsetter, right? So
awesome.
I get it. And I was very fortunate. So, when I, me, I get paid to speak around the country. And I always say that my wife is the one that is the reason why I'm here talking today. If my wife didn't get involved, I'm probably not even here. I'm a statistic like everybody else because it was so much. So I digress. Sorry about that. But
I love it.
That's where I love what you're doing because it's by being a third party, you're not VA, you're not military, but you are a veteran. I don't know how many, I can't remember how many veterans are employed by you that help, but they care and they've got that service leadership, that servant's heart leadership first, where they do care about the people that they're seeing, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. So let's fast forward. Because you're in year 5 now, doing extremely well, right? At what point did you realize that you had an amazing impact on a client that you knew that this was going to be successful beyond your wildest dreams?
That's a great question. There's many, I mean, you just look at all the reviews. I can't tell you how many screenshots I have, but there's a couple that really come full circle. And it's actually not even my client. It's one of my consultants' clients. And that's really to answer your questions because we've built something that's repeatable, that's scalable, and that as long as you have the right intentions, anyone could do this, right? And that's what we're trying to foster. And so it was a client, Victoria's client. He sent her a video after he was successful, got 100%. He got some up 30 grand in back pay, something like that. It was crazy because he went from like 20 to 100 over some 8-9 months or something like that of back pay.
Wow.
and he wasn't accurately rated, and he was hurting, and he had to have reduced hours because of his knees were so bad. He was a forklift operator, I believe, and just being in the forklift, it just killed him. Anyways, he's not the most tech savvy, but he's got his little phone hiding behind the cookie jar. And it's a video of, he's like, okay, yeah, he's like basically talking Victoria through it, but his wife's coming home. His wife's a nurse working her ass off all the time, the primary breadwinner of the house, right? And sure enough, she comes around the corner with groceries in her arms, right? And he says, honey, we did it. Got the 100%. Back pay hit today. And she just drops everything. You hear jars break and tears just start coming down her face. And she embraces her husband. Oh my God, she has no idea she's on camera. So after the embrace, right, he comes over and says, hey, say hi to Victoria, and she's just sobbing. Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you so much. And when she shared that with our team, we share these wins. We always have, weekly, bi-weekly and monthly meetings that we're able to share lessons learned, policy changes, all this kind of stuff, because everyone teleworks, right? So it's not like we can just hang out with each other. So
exactly,
we have these times where we get together and feel that camaraderie. But she shared that. I was like, what it told me is that our vision and our why is strong enough to permeate throughout the entire organization. And this is the desired end state. This is what we do every single week. We change people's lives. And when you can wake up on a Monday morning knowing you are just waiting for that call for another person's life that you changed, it helps you pick up that call or that phone and call the person that maybe didn't call you back that probably should have. It gives you that sweet manna from the heavens to keep you going, because veterans are not the easiest people to work with. Everyone has their own mental health challenges.
You're right.
Right? And so it continues to recharge the battery, that servant leader battery, to go out. And sometimes you need a hug, sometimes you need a kick in the ass to at least look at this thing, at least get through a screening, at least give me some time to challenge some of your assumptions, to teach you something and set you on your way. And that way, if you need us or want us, you can come on board. But at least you know the options, and then take that out there. A lot of people don't even know there's a free market out there. Most people assume you have to use the VA.
Yeah.
There's only 23% of veterans have a VA disability rating. And I think it should be more like 80%. Only 23%. You can Google that shit.
23 million veterans, less than 23% have a VA rating? Jesus.
And it should be more. That's an assumption, yes, and it's a worthy assumption to challenge. And so that one sticks out. Our record in back pay is $57,000. That someone paid off their house with that.
Oh,
and that was through our appeals process, because we have in the nuclear Navy, you learn the breadth and depth, or the full scope of everything. And so when we built this, we have the breadth and depth. We have partners with VA accredited attorneys that if they don't, because a lot of times the VA doesn't train their frontline raters, how vets can even bypass them. So I try to say, I assume noble intent and say they're not trying to fuck you here.
They just don't know.
They just don't know. So forgive them, Father. They know not what they do, is what I say. So part of that is the education piece. Like, well, actually, per this law, our doctor's legit. They had to get seen by the doctor. They've reviewed medical evidence, and you have to take this at face value, so long as it's probative, and it is. So I cordially invite you to do the right thing and make a new decision, and it comes back, right? So we have the breadth and depth. The majority of our clients are successful out the gate, no problems. Some have to go through appeals, but we are highly successful in our entire process from cradle to grave. And there's even reviews. Like, what I try to tell my team is, give them something. They got to come away winning somehow, some way. And if make the recommendations if they're their brother or sister. So if the recommendation is you have enough, you can be successful on your own, this is what I would do if I were you, because we cannot advise. We cannot get direct advice because we're not accredited claims agents or attorneys. But I can say this is what I would do if I were you. And by the way, here's some public-facing resources that I would use. You can decide whether to use them on your side. Good luck.
Well, and here's the thing. I think you guys also set the tone. I was fortunate. I was rated 100%. I had a little help from Tulsi Gabbard because she was, the congresswoman in Hawaii at the time when I was retiring, and we knew each other personally. So, and she saw my case, was like, yeah, well, you're not going to get screwed out of this.
Yeah, she's amazing.
That's how amazing of a person she is. People just don't realize how awesome she is. But for those that have went through the rating process, I want them to understand this is not a trick. This isn't like credit repair to where you charge off a bunch of debt and they magically get rid of it for you. This is literally, like what Kyle said, it's the interpretation of the data that is there by leveraging the source documents, i.e. the guidelines, the law,
DFR, Federal Regulations, Chapter 38, Book 4.
right? And these people are professionals. This is what they do. The main difference is the VA folks, God bless them, you got to have the VA, but they're also 9-to-5 jobs. They work to time, not to standard, most of them. And I don't want to, because there are some great, diamonds that work at the VA. I've met some of them, right? It is a thankless job for them. For them, it's all about volume and numbers and hitting, as you said, key performance indicators or metrics, right? So they don't see you as a veteran human being. They see you as a case file, and they see that, I've got 50 case files on my desk and I'm already behind. How do I get these through?
Right.
So, and that's just human nature. I mean, it just is. Being an entrepreneur and having people have worked for me in the past, I mean, it just is what it is, right?
It's a business. It's just a different business model. And
so that being the case, when you come to, Kyle, when you go to bevetstrong.com and you fill out that initial questionnaire and you get that intake with one of your consultants, you need to be transparent. Just like when I tell folks when you're trying to buy a home, I'm going to find out everything about you. It's just whether or not you tell me up front or not. So please save us some time, save us some energy, and just be transparent. And if you're transparent, they're going to be very transparent with their response with you, right? They're going to say, okay, hey, I think we've got something here. This makes sense. Or, hey, you know what? You may have been rated accurately, but they missed this or what have you, right? So they're not going to give you false promises of you're going to be rich, blah, blah, blah. They're going to just make sure you're educated based off of the data that's been provided and give you courses of action, right? But ultimately, they have to take the steps to make it happen. You can't, Kyle and his crew are not going to push you along. They're not going to pull you along, because for every one of you that wants to be their him-han, there's 5 to 10 others that are literally doing everything they can to make this work, right? So,
and we're not allowed to represent anyone. We cannot do anything for anybody. And so that's really something we make clear from the very beginning. And so the people that are the most successful with us, they're fighters by nature, and they just need, it's more of a militaristic, hey, I need a chief or I need a sergeant, holding me accountable, right? So as a consultant, we can absolutely hold people accountable. And it's our job to meet them in a space they're naturally best, not expect them to meet us in our space. And so part of our training when we're first is like, hey, again, sometimes you need a hug, sometimes you need a kick in the ass. And some guys, I tell you what, every single time we've kicked someone in the ass, they've been, thank you. I need that. I need that militaristic, get your shit together. You got your family, we're waiting on you here. That hard, because I can't get fired. I don't work for the government. I can cuss. I can tell a guy to get your shit together. Yeah. And they appreciate it, right? And so that is a much more familiar way, I guess you could say, that we can leverage.
You're that drill sergeant in the morning that everybody needs when they don't want to get out of bed to go work out.
When needed, yes, when needed. Yeah. So that's a blessing, I think. And does that happen all the time? No, actually, it's pretty rare. But because generally most people that are using our programs are pretty motivated. Especially now since we don't advertise. Generally, someone has already heard about us. And so they generally have an idea of what things are. Of course, we challenge assumptions, but generally people are motivated. It's about time to start fighting for myself like I fought for other people.
Let's talk about that, because you hit a key point. I'm sending someone your way that we talked about before the show, he said he spent a ton of money just to get from 30 to 70. And I guarantee you it's because he found them from an advertisement, right? So folks, I need you to understand this. This is what's really cool. You can Google search or even Chat GPT search Veterans Advocacy, and it's going to blow you away what comes up first that's not a paid promotion. Now, just to put it in perspective, I don't use Google search anymore. I use Chat GPT to search because it takes all the different search databases out there and gives me a non-political answer to what I'm looking for. And what's crazy is when you search for veteran advocacy groups, it's crazy how Atlas Benefit is one of the top ones that comes up, if not the top one. I think
it is the top one. So it's funny you say that. A recent prospective client has a computer science degree. As I was pulling some stuff up, and I said, so how'd you hear about us? I always ask that question to buy me some time in my system, but also hear, whatever success, because it's basically trust carried forward, right? Yep. That's always fun to talk about, especially if I remember the guy, and it's always fun to talk shit about his buddy.
Yep.
I'm kidding. I don't do that.
Gotcha.
But he said, no, I didn't hear about you. I don't trust Google because of some of the reasons. It's a pay to play scheme. And so I put in ChatGPT, who's the best VA disability company. You guys came up first. And he goes, well, I put some other criteria in. It's about overall reviews. And you guys came up first there too. I go, bullshit. No way. He goes, yeah. I go, are you serious? You're not fucking with me here? Like, you prove that? I will buy you a fucking Starbucks Christmas cup, if I have to. And he goes, no, dude. Yeah, he just took a screenshot of it. 2 screenshots, 2 different search criteria. And Atlas Benefit Consulting was first. And to be honest, I got kind of emotional at that point. It's like, it was kind of a validation or vindication or whatever you want to say that what we're doing.
It validates your true core mission.
Yes.
Obviously it works. Your clientele believe in you, so they share it. You don't advertise. You don't pay to market. I mean, if we hadn't met 5 years ago, I wouldn't have known about you. But I mean, other than we're also connected on LinkedIn, and of course I send every veteran I know to you. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not like you're out there putting Facebook ads and Google ads. Like, and the sad part is there's a lot of that crap going on right now. I mean,
so much.
Desperate times create desperate marketing tactics,
right?
Which I hate. Right? I mean, I see it in the mortgage industry. You see it in the credit repair industry, and I say credit repair in air quotes because, anyway,
relative.
Veterans debt relief. I can't tell you how many ads I've seen lately. Like, do you owe $200,000 in debt? We can get you out. Like, and it's just like, oh my god.
Just
and then they get
transferring debt.
Yeah. So that's what I love. You actually provide a real benefit and service to the clientele, right? Like it's real, it's tangible, right? Obviously, like you said, you're passionate about it. You would do it for free, but you still got to pay your rent, right? And that's your mortgage, and you got to put food on the table, and that's I'll be honest. What's the old contractor say when you get a bid? You can do cheap, fast, or good, but you only pick 2 out of the 3, right? If it's cheap and fast, it's not going to be good. If it's cheap and good, it's not going to be fast. And if it's fast and good, it ain't going to be cheap, right? So, there's merit to that because you guys are literally the best at what you do. So you should be compensated for it. And we don't need to talk about how that works, but I know it's a very reasonable package that you guys put together for veterans.
Lowest barrier to entry, unless someone can prove me wrong. I mean, I've done my own market research. I pretended to be a client in some places, right, just to see, to be able to benchmark.
It's crazy what some of these people charge with no guarantee of anything other than they'll take your money.
Exactly. Yep. And so with us, we're also very clear, like we don't make any promises, and no one's buying a rating with us. No one's buying an increase. What they're buying is a service for us to coordinate care with doctors that give a shit and our help as consultants to get them ready for them to be able to fully communicate the frequency, duration, severity of their conditions, right? And then through our new service connections communication training program, it's a self-advocacy thing. It's like, okay, gap analysis on, okay, what are the requirements that the VA has? Here's what those are. Okay, what gaps do you have? And how, if you don't have records, doesn't mean you can't go get them. I'm not a doctor, but if you're telling me these are that's jacked up, go tell a doctor those things.
Yeah.
And so it's
get it documented.
Get it documented, right? So the service happens no matter what, but it drives. We have to behave in a way that drives results and excellence. That brings me all the way back to the beginning, right? It's all about excellence, and if you're willing to do what other people are not willing to do, you're gonna get better than most, right? Or if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got, and so you got to behave differently and better, and that's what the program really is.
So I want to wrap up with a couple questions here because we're getting near the end of the timeline.
Okay.
So it's a 2-part, right? But it's literally one question, but it's for 2. All right. Okay. So, we're going to go to the part of advice for veterans seeking VA disability assistance, right? So let's break that into 2. If you're currently serving and you've got less than 3 years, or if you are already on the trail where it looks like you may be med boarded or rated or what have you, what is your advice to them, right? And then the second part of the question is okay, you're already out of service. You've already been rated, but you don't agree with it. What is your advice to them? So let's start with the first one.
Great. So first thing I would say is I'm not going to give any advice. I'm going to tell people what I would do if I were them, or if I could go back and tell myself what I could do better for myself back then. And so if I was within 2 or 3 years of getting out, the first thing I would do is start trying to have a mindset shift. And what I say is the people that mind don't matter, and the people that matter don't mind. Meaning, anyone that's going to try to stop you or guilt trip you or tell you you're a piece of shit or a pussy for going to the doctor for something, they're not going to be there in 5 years after you've retired or gotten out of the military and you're thriving and you also have a VA disability rating. So fuck them. Okay. The people that mind don't matter to you. So what I'm saying is get the care and treatment that you need when you need it. You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to realize these things don't get better with time. Okay. And the people that mind, or the people that mind don't matter. The people that matter don't mind. Meaning the people that do love you and do care about you and are your buddies and say, yeah, I'll take your watch, or I'll cover for you. Go get yourself taken care of. And those are the guys that may be there, 5 years after you get out. And so mindset shift number 1, documentation number 2.
Okay.
And the point is you have to go communicate things when they're at their worst, how they are now where they are at their worst, and escalate through, even though it's inconvenient. Yes, it is inconvenient. Yes.
And it goes against the way that you're typically trained in the military, right? So again, that's why that mindset shift is number 1, right?
Yeah, at least in transition, right? So as you're transitioning to, we're so used to sacrificing ourselves for the mission and our people. We don't want to be a buddy fucker. We call them Blue Falcons in the Navy. Don't be a Blue Falcon. And so there's ways you can do that with forethought, where you can mitigate negative consequences for going to the doctor and missing some things, but also be advantageous in getting accurate documentation for the things. And then also knowing what those things could be. Look up Chapter 38, Book 4 of the CFRs. You can Google that. Or look up VA disability diagnostic codes. It'll tell you everything, what the code is and what its rating criteria is. You may not realize that when you have hemorrhoids, that's a claimable condition. A lot of people have hemorrhoids. The food sucks, or we're dehydrated, and I'm on a submarine and, I'm eating freaking beanies and weenies for 7 days in a row because we ran out of food at the end of the underway, and I'm shitting bricks. That's a claimable condition. And so that can be up to 20%. That gets you a VA funding fee waived after 10%. And it's just you got to talk about your butthole. No one likes doing that. But if you can do it and be real about these things, there is compensation involved. Because think about it. If a civilian was doing your job, they'd be getting paid fucking too.
You hit something there that I'm going to reiterate. The mindset, or the mind shift, right? The mindset shift. But at the same time, the due diligence, go after. It goes back to what a sergeant major told me back when I was a young pup. Private Scott, no one will care for you as much as you care for yourself, no matter what your leader says.
Brilliant.
So I've had to live with that mantra literally, and I carried it over into what I do now, right? But what you're talking about, yes, have forethought. You see training schedules. You can do stuff. You have a timeline. So you've got your left and right limits. You may also have to sacrifice some of your own personal time.
Yes.
Right? In fact, you probably will have to sacrifice some of your own personal time. But it's important. And if it's important, it's just as important as the mission that you're serving for the Navy, Army, Air Force, Space Force, whatever, right? Big military. But it's your mission. So would you execute your mission half-assed? Or would you do it like you're doing your job? Right? So... And so that's the key part there, because that's what I think a lot of people, again, because of the way they've been, any certain amount of time in the military, you just think a certain way. So you got to think about, I'm executing my personal mission the same way I would execute the mission for my boss, right, or for my team. So
we're always better at helping other people more than we are helping ourselves. And if anyone would tell their friend or their other buddy in the military to go do those things, but they don't do it themselves, right there is the key. And people realize, oh shit, I guess I probably should be doing that for and that's what I do is have a guy that's so used to sacrificing themselves to have an out-of-body experience.
Yep.
Put yourself in a different perspective, right? It's about changing perspective. Instead of like this, like you said, 30,000 foot view, right? And now you're playing chess, or that's probably not the best way to say that. You're being more strategic in your decision making, right? And taking action. So I think it's great that things we're talking about, you're also saying from some leadership that you had in your transition. Yeah. That's awesome to hear, because that's rare. Sure. A lot of guys don't get that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, and that happened when I was a young private, and it was just something that I carried on. And as a leader myself, I just remember I would tell my subordinates, all the way up to, E7, chief petty officer in the Navy or sergeant first class in the Army, which is what I was. But that was one of the things I always would drive home. Like, guys, I love you. Your leaders love you, but you got to love yourself more than any of us, because when it comes right down to it, we're going to focus on the mission, even though we're here to take care of you. You need to be able to take care of yourself, right? So, okay, so that's some great advice. So you gave 2. Was there a third one for anybody that's transitioning that you're?
No, I think that's the bet. That there's enough there to drown in, so I'll leave that.
Well, let's transition to you have transitioned then. What's the advice?
Transition, you got a rating, I would just say challenge assumptions, right? So are you accurately rated? If you have not looked at the rating criteria yourself, then you don't know if you're accurately rated. A lot of people assume that, hey, they only gave me 10%, so it must only be a 10%. Or even worse, they say this: Jimmy lost both of his legs and he's only at 20, so that means I should be less than that. Challenge assumptions. The assumptions are that Jimmy's accurately rated. Probably not, right? No. So you cannot play the compare game. That's like looking through the wrong side of a peephole at someone's house and trying to guess what the furniture configuration is. It's a distorted perspective. Like you said, you only show people what you want them to see. And we don't talk to each other about these things openly and perfectly. So you can never compare yourself to someone else. Compare yourself to the law. So if you have already transitioned, look at the Chapter 38, Book 4 rating criteria. See if you're accurately rated or not. And if not, educate yourself on the options. There's a...
Well, let's be honest. They probably don't know if they're accurately rated. So what's one of the best things they could do? They could go to Be Vet Strong and say, hey, I've been rated. I don't know if I've been accurately rated. Can you help me and take a look at this? I'm pretty sure you're going to say yes, right?
That would be the call to action, right? So me personally, in all my screenings in 5 years of thousands of vets, I've only turned away 12 people that are accurately rated based on what they said. And I tell you what, 3 of those people, after I said, well, I would never tell you to hurt yourself, but next time you're in a flare up, next time you go camping or hiking, or you're loading up that 4x4, pay attention to that pain in your knee or your back or your neck, right? Yeah. Or you wake up funny, and then see what the answer would be. If the answer changes, give me a call, right?
Yeah.
And some people have come back, right? And so it's challenging assumptions. And so once you figure out if you're accurately rated or not, educate yourself on the options, whether it be appeals, different types of representation, free market, and the free services. And in our program for compliance, we ensure that people know about the free services. And even can send resources of Googling VSOs in their area. And then the last part is documentation, right? Ideally, the best, you don't need us if you can go prove to the VA through what's called continuity of care that you are getting care and continued care and treatment for these things. So don't be tough again, so and maybe if you're just now ready to start getting it reevaluated, put yourself first for a year or 2, get some care and treatment, and go wing it on your own.
How important is My eBenefits or My Healthy Vet for someone that's transitioned?
Great questions. So that's a lot of what we talk about because there's pros and cons. So My Healthy Vet, is usually if you're using the VA for healthcare. So the VA has 3 organizations. They have the cemetery, but let's not talk about them. Let's talk about the Veterans Health Administration, the VHA, the doctors that care about you and treat you, treatment, prescription, or diagnosis, right? And the VBA, the Veterans Benefits Administration, the insurance company side of the house. The doctors that do not care about you. They're not responsible for your care treatment. They're there to stamp if you're grade A choice beef or not. Okay. These are my opinions. I'm not slandering government.
No, you're absolutely true.
So the Veterans Health Administration, people think, oh, the VA diagnosed me with sleep apnea, so it must be service connected. Not true. They can care for you as you are now, but they won't even write a nexus letter for you because the right hand can't cut off the left. Right. It's a conflict of interest. So you got to forgive them for that. So while it is easier for the VA to find and establish continuity of care, if you're using VA healthcare system, yes, it's harder to establish nexus because they are also not incentivized to have great documentation as far as where these things are coming from. Okay. So civilian healthcare, there's incentive for them to get to the bottom of things because they can make money off tests. If they don't know if it's not an easy answer, they're going to say, I'm going to get this test. I'm going to do this imaging. I'm going to do this blood work. I'm going to send you to this neurologist. Let's send you to this ear, nose, and throat guy. Figure out what's really going on here. There's incentive to drive down the actual diagnosis, and civilian doctors, the ideal person, anyone that's treating someone, that's the best doctor to do a nexus letter, which stands for, or nexus is Latin for to connect. And it helps establish nexus on why these things should be from the military, not just from being out for 20 years.
Because they have no skin in the game.
Exactly.
On either side. They're literally there just to help you, right? Yep. So there's no political motivations. They don't get compensated from the VA or get dinged from the VA. They're just doing their job, which is part of their Hippocratic Oath, right? Like they got
Hippocratic Oath, exactly. And then that can be leveraged by veterans to help get service connections because of the Hippocratic Oath, and that's helpful. So I say each individual has to make that decision, right? It depends on their quality of their health care, where they're at, opportunities for care. but it's something to explore. I say work parallel paths until, and be intentional. Heaven forbid in the free market, let's say in regular insurance, you got multiple care providers. You can go to a doctor and say, Doc, I either have some symptoms or behaviors that are making me less effective at home and at work, and I need some care and treatment for those things to be more effective. But I also would like good documentation because I intend on making a claim with the VA are going to help me. And if
I'll be honest with you, I run parallel. Obviously I've got TRICARE for life, being medically retired, because I was medically retired 3 months shy of my 20-year mark. Right?
Oh, fucking hell, that sucks.
Well, and again, having Tulsi Gabbard on my side,
it helps.
That helped get the VA stuff, and then of course I got my combat service related compensation, which basically took place of what I would normally got as a retirement, and it's also tax free, so it worked out. But with my current career, I run a civilian insurance as well, right? And part of the reason for that is because on the VA side, okay, ED guys, I'm gonna be honest, you're 51, done some of the stuff I've done, it's going to happen, right? Well, the VA says, okay, we'll give you 4 pills a month because that should be enough for you, right? Testosterone levels. If your testosterone drops below 200, or if it's at 200, they're like, hey, that's normal for your age. Again, VA side, right? Civilian side, no, they're like, Jay, there's no reason why you should be at 200. You want a prime example? Look at Bobby Kennedy, 73 years old, ripped like a motherfucker, right? And thank God he's going to be taking over the health stuff for the country. I think that's amazing. But I mean, yeah, I was at one point doing this career is very sedentary compared to what I was doing before. I was at 300 pounds, right? And because my thyroid was shot, just partly from doing deployments and doing steroids, right? I mean, you go on a deployment, you work out, you go kill people, you come back, you work out, shoot up. Just stupid shit you did as a young man. But then you don't see the effects of it until you're later on in life. Whatever you want about Ozempic, the VA does not want to prescribe something of that nature because they don't believe in it, right? Just like they won't prescribe testosterone. On the civilian sector, yeah, Ozempic is what helped me kickstart along with my being able to work out. But then it was also testosterone because I was so damn tired. I didn't, right? So I ran both paths and I keep it documented. And then of course I have it uploaded. Now, granted, I'm already 100%, but I just keep adding to the pile saying, look, motherfuckers, like your initial assessment was wrong. I mean,
right.
Here's the crazy part. ED, they acknowledge that, yeah, you have it, but we're not, it's not our fault. I'm like, well, that's funny. I didn't have that shit before I joined the Army. You know what I mean? So like so you're absolutely right. Like I'm a firm believer in running parallel because the civilian side, they don't care other than they just want to fix the problem. Like, let's identify the problem. Let's fix it. Right. Where, like you said, on the VA side, it's kind of like, well, we can't really fix the problem because if we do, we get trouble over here. Right. Yeah. So firm believer in that. Man, we've went really long this time. I apologize, folks. It's been a great conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Kyle, you're a true patriot. I love it. So proud of what you've done. I'm proud that I get to say that I get to know you and call you as a friend. But folks, a couple things, because this will be on, Spotify as well as on YouTube on the podcast side. In the description down below, we're going to have, Be Vet Strong. It's real easy to remember. BeVetStrong.com, right? That's where you're going to want to go. Kyle is also going to give me some links to the literature that he was talking about earlier as far as understanding the VA rating codes and stuff like that. We'll have those links in there as well to where you can literally just go to the VA portal. And really it's about educating yourself, right? Again, the mission of the Veterans Financial Edge is it's not just about finances, but it's what you can do that ultimately helps you give you that financial edge. So that being said, folks, thank you so much. We'll see you again next week, and aloha.